Changing the game through real estate, yeah. Changing the game through real estate. I can never wait, got what it takes to got this on my plate. And I got a budget, teach you how to save. Listen to this podcast, you will be amazed. Play this any morning, any night, any day. We're the winning team, we were born to be brave. Yeah, changing the game through real estate.
Hey everyone, it's Tyler Wynn with the winning team, and this is the Changing the Game Through Real Estate podcast. One of the main reasons we started this show was wanting to help people by bringing on guests with inspiring stories that can teach us information that we should have been taught in schools.
All right, so we're here today with Ashley Horner, the boss lady entrepreneur of Virginia Beach. So we're just really want to talk to you and interested in what drives you, your backstory. I mean, you have so many businesses. We could go through, touch on a little bit of all of them. But yeah, so how did you get started in the entrepreneur world?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. And I absolutely love telling my story and hopes that anybody who's listening, hopefully they'll get a couple golden nuggets today to take away to feel empowered. And just on this journey of, doing what it is that calls you in your passion. So I grew up in the middle of Oklahoma on a horse ranch. I always really struggled with school. I was definitely a daydreamer and I didn't really know who I wanted to become or what I wanted to do. So just to kind of do a Cliff Notes version of how I ended up here in Virginia Beach and how my entrepreneurial journey began. My father was diagnosed with cancer right out of high school.
Oh,
and
wow.
He lived, it was 9 months after he was diagnosed. So during that time in my life, I didn't really, it was the transition from high school, not really knowing what I wanted to do, going to a junior college, wanting to be closer at home to my father. And at that point, I was a soccer player growing up. I was really insecure about my body. During that era, there wasn't a whole lot of females who were hitting the iron. There weren't too many female pipe hitters. And so, it kind of all transitioned to what I wanted to do or who I wanted to become. And I was really, quite honestly, kind of lost on what I wanted to do. I wasn't strong in the education realm of things. And the one thing that I knew how to do was fitness. And so I became a personal trainer. I was a floor trainer. I cleaned the bathrooms. I took out the trash. I wiped down the equipment. I racked the weights. And then that kind of led me to my first business, or the path of being an entrepreneur, of making the decision to not just being a floor trainer, but wanting to reach more people. And so I brought my fitness business was my first business that I started. And I brought that online and I started selling ebooks, training programs. And so that's kind of how the entrepreneurial journey started.
Nice.
Very cool. That's awesome. So you kind of went from not knowing what you were doing, kind of basically lost in a way because you were in this transition period and you really put the metal to the grind and went for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
All right. So yeah, you mentioned that the Horner Fitness, I guess, was your first. What was your second business that you went into?
So what I did is I had this idea. So I have now I have I have a legal team that works with me. An attorney. I have an advisor team that works for me when it comes to investments and stuff. And I'm really close to one of my attorneys that I have. And he's like, Ashley, he's like, being a fitness model, you're going to expire. What are you going to do? Whenever, you ain't good looking anymore, you got to start thinking about what you want to do. And so that, inevitably kind of put the bug in my ear of what else is out there possibly. I absolutely love designing and creating. And my second business that I opened was coffee whiskey bar in Virginia Beach, Virginia, along Shore Drive. It's called American Brew. So, I'm the type, I have like the personality, like if I think up something in my mind and I want to do it, like I just do it. There's absolutely nothing that's going to stop me from doing whatever it is that I've kind of like manifested in my mind, that I've seen, making the dream of all of it a reality. And so the American Brew Coffee Whiskey Shop was my second business. Now, I want everybody to understand that I have zero background in coffee. I have zero background in whiskey. I'm not a good cook myself. I'm still not a good cook. But I had this idea, and I was inspired to open up a coffee shop. And along Shore Drive at the time, there was one Starbucks. It's where the Lobster place is now, but there was a Starbucks there. It had shut down. And I was like, this area doesn't have just a good local coffee shop. And so I just had this idea of like just having a place where I could bring community together. Honestly, like in a selfish way, it was like I could have a coffee shop that I could go and work at, because it was really hard for me to work at my house. And so I was like, this place, just like this area needs a coffee shop. I was like, I would love to have just like a good coffee shop. And in my mind, like whenever anything seems difficult, and hopefully this is relatable to you guys, it's easy to look at the whole mountain and to be like, wow, there's no way I can summit that. Like you look at the very top and it's like, there's no way that I don't even know the first part about like making a trail or paving a path to get to the top. But what I've learned to do with all of my endeavors is I break it down so simply that it's like I'm only looking at the first few steps in front of me and not the whole mountain. So with the coffee whiskey bar, I made it so simple in my mind to open up a coffee shop and to operate it. And so whenever you look at something like that, it kind of it doesn't make it seem like as intimidating. You know what I mean? It's just like you take little chunks off of like the big picture.
It reverts back to like the whole how do you eat elephant, like one bite at a time. And anyone can do anything if they literally just simplify things, because with business, a lot of people are like, I don't know where to start. And it's like, well, if you start from square one and then you accomplish each small goal, you're going to get to that mountain eventually. It's like one foot in front of another to get to that hike at the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
Just gotta start.
Yeah.
No worries. So was American Brew, was that your first go as an entrepreneur, as like a manager, like having employees and everything and managing that world?
Yeah. So for my fitness business, that was whenever I had my first like group of leaders that I was building in like my fitness, like the fitness side of things. But yes, that was my first brick and mortar business that I had. And I mean, I've learned a lot. Like if you were going to do anything wrong, like I've done everything wrong in the books. So it takes a lot of like failing and not being afraid to fail. And that's kind of whenever you learn either like, oh, you need to pivot and go a different direction, or, I like to tell people like, don't be afraid to go after the things that you want to go after. And just, if you're going to fail, like, let's fail fast. Like, let's figure out that something's not going to work, and let's fail quickly instead of like a slow bleed out. Let's just fail, and then let's just pivot. And
learn from it.
Yes. And you learn from it. So that was my very first business with like a brick and mortar. Yeah, a lot of mistakes, but it's so gratifying, and I'm absolutely proud of my team that I have, building the brand and everything that we're doing at American Brew.
Nice. Well, and you've grown it too, because I used to work on Shore Drive, and I remember not having the coffee shops or anywhere local to go to. So I went to, I think it was your first location. It was like in a strip mall at American Brew, but now you've expanded and you have the bigger building, right?
Yeah. So okay. I can talk about that for a little bit. So yeah. that was actually really bad. So whenever I, kind of going back to whenever I was saying that if there's something that I want or something that I see, like I just go for it. I don't, and this is something that I have learned. And a lot of it comes with just maturity and being a better businesswoman and a better leader. That, that was the first place that I looked at, and I signed the dotted line on the lease. I believe it was like a 1-year lease. Signed the dotted line, and I didn't know any of the rules for the Commonwealth of Virginia. I didn't know that if I was going to have hard liquor like whiskey, that I also had to serve food. I just didn't know. I was never like a big drinker myself. Like, I'm like, well, I didn't know that. So after I signed the dotted line, probably ordered the espresso machine, I remember I had a meeting with my ABC agent, which is those of you who are listening. It's it's like the licensing people to get your liquor license. And they met me at the original spot that American Brew was, and they're like, well, you have to have a kitchen in here. You have to serve food. And I remember I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I was like, yep. And the agent left, and I remember sitting on this pile of wood, like inside the establishment, and I just cried because I was like, what in the hell are you doing, Ashley? Like, you don't know what you're doing. You have no rights to be here. Like, you're just gonna burn through money. And I had to, again, it's basically, you got to go back and you got to take it one step at a time. And I told myself that if anybody else can learn how to run a coffee shop and a coffee whiskey bar or a restaurant, I was like, I can learn how to do it too. And so I ended up, a really big mistake that I did is I put a lot of money into a building that I did not own. So I burned through at least $60,000 or $70,000 in cash that I had accumulated, that I personally invested into my own business, like redoing the electrical for the entire building because I had to have a specific wattage outlet to be able to run the equipment that I needed to run and for it to pass code. Like, it was simple, small things like that I just didn't know. And you talk about like, making the mistakes and just like failing, but like failing hard. And so I knew the building where we are at now, it was like, I had been at the location that I was for about 9 months, and I either needed to close American Brew or I had to take a big risk, and I needed to move. And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up purchasing the building and the location that we're at now. And as scary as that was, like that was a huge move. Like in a game of chess, that would have it was a huge move, and it was a huge risk. And I did it, and it was the best decision. I just had to wash all the losses that I had with that original spot. I just had to wash it away. But what that did teach me is it taught me a lot when it comes to putting money into a building. If you're operating a business, it taught me a lot in regards to how you invest into your building. And if you're wanting to open up a business, you have to do your homework to know like what alterations do you have to make to your location specifically, especially if you don't own it, to get it to an operational standard. So.
Right. That's a good point too, because you would assume if you're renting a commercial space, then it would be up to code. So I wouldn't have ever thought about that.
Yeah, I really like the guy that owns the building, and like now I saw him not too long ago, and he was like, how's it going? I'm like, good. I'm like, how's that building upgrade I gave you? He's like, thanks, Ashley. I'm like, yeah, you're welcome.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's a lot of, I think people need to understand that it can be scary, like going out on your own entrepreneurial journey, but you have to know, like, everybody, that's part of growing and learning, and you can't be afraid to take those risks.
Yeah.
I mean, you have such a great positive attitude and letting people know it's okay to fail, and look how like successful you've become today over what you've done. It's okay to have those happens. Now, being a woman and in business, what have been your biggest trials and tribulations you've had to overcome being a woman doing what you do?
Mm-hmm. So, well, like in the beginning, I had to have the mindset, and my mantra at the time was basically like, like walk into a room full of like, whether they were my contractors, doesn't matter like what type of work they were doing, but you have to walk in a room, especially like what this would have been like 6 years ago now. I had to be very confident walking into a room. I had to make sure that I was fully aware of everything that like whatever job like entailed. But as far as being a female entrepreneur, I started changing my mindset to that, because for the longest time I would kind of title myself as like a female entrepreneur, or not necessarily playing like a victim card because like I'm a female and I'm an entrepreneur, like it was a man's world. But over the last probably couple years, I've really started changing my mindset that I don't want to just be a good I don't want to be a good business person and being a female. Like I want to be a good business person, period. It doesn't matter man or woman.
Yep.
Like I want to be a good business person, an excellent entrepreneur, and most importantly, like a really good leader to my team, and grow in my leadership abilities, but also empower my team to grow in their leadership journey.
Nice. Very cool.
You're so motivated and driven. Where do you get the energy? And have you always been like this growing up? Like when you were younger, did you have all this tenacity?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. No, I mean, I didn't. I was actually really shy, and I still have, like, I'm still like a little bit shy, which is kind of funny because you'd think like people with big social medias or, like that they shouldn't be shy, but I'm definitely kind of like, if I'm not working or like with my kids, I'm definitely kind of like a homebody. So it came from like whenever I was doing the fitness side of things in the beginning before American Brew like was even a thing. I was a single mom and I really, really, really struggled. I was in a bad relationship. I really, really struggled to the point where like our electricity was getting turned off. I remember like trying to move my car around because I was like, I'm pretty sure it's going to get repoed and I just got to like, make sure that, and, a lot of little things like that. And like my drive, there's this one time and, it's just a story about my middle son, Cash, that, he's 12 now. And at the time he was probably 2. We went through the McDonald's drive-through and I was going to get him a Happy Meal. And he was sitting in the back seat. I'll never forget this. He was sitting in the back seat in this old, like kind of beat up, definitely it was like a beat up car. And I went through the McDonald's drive-through and like none of my cards would work. I didn't have any money on me, but like my debit cards didn't work. I didn't have a credit card. But all of the money that I thought that I had, it being in a really bad relationship, it was all taken from me. Like I was taken off like it was just a really, really bad situation. And that was the defining moment for me. And I'll never forget this. And it's as visual as if it happened yesterday. The lady at the McDonald's, it was like $2 or something, she's like, oh, sorry. Like, like this card didn't work. So I pulled out like another card. I'm like, oh, can you try this one? I was like, oh, like, sorry, that card didn't work. Like it's that awkward, like, and I'll never forget. I looked in the rear view mirror at Cash and I was like fighting back the tears because at that point, like I kind of like I figured like I knew what had happened. And, I just told him, we ended up scrounging up enough change to be able to pay for it or whatever in the floorboard of the car or whatever. But I remember looking at him in the mirror and I said, no matter what it takes, Cash, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be successful for you guys. And I'm going to work my ass off until I get there. And like, ultimately, that's basically what happened. I just started like, I just freaking lasered in on how to be successful, how I could make money, how I could support my kids. And that's what I did. I just hustled.
Nice.
Absolutely. What a great story.
Yeah. So you have Valkyrie, your clothing company, you have American Screenprinting. How did those kind of come into play?
Yeah. So Valkyrie I think it has to do with like having like a mindset, like an entrepreneurial mindset. And with my clothing line, I was like, I was always wearing clothes. Like I'm wearing one like right now. This is like a newer one that hasn't dropped yet, but
Very cute.
thanks. But I was like, why can't I, I always wore like Roxy, and I loved just all these like kind of like surfer girl brands. And I was like, why can't I have a clothing line or something similar? And then I can wear my own line that I love, and I can tell people about it, and it can have a message behind it. And like, I was like, why, like I should be able to just wear like clothes that represent me. And then like, if other people want to buy this and like believe in the brand and the messaging, I'm like, I was like, why not? I was like, that makes sense. And that was several years ago. And then the American Screenprinting came about, similar thinking. I was like, why am I paying a third party to print the clothes, to whatever I wanted done to the clothes, to make the clothes? Whenever I was like, I can just start my own screen printing company, and I can, print the clothes myself and take out the middleman. But not only for that reason specifically for Valkyrie, we also at that point had a need for Ashley Horner Fitness. We had a need for American Brew, and then there was Valkyrie. And it was like there was just so much. Like why I was like, why I need to just bring this all in house, and everything needs to be produced here where I can have hands on it. I can get, because I, like I was saying in the beginning of our interview, I absolutely love the creativity part of things. I love to create, to design. And I just wanted to be, like closer to home, like within our camp. And so that's what I did. I created a screen printing company.
Nice. So do you use that specifically for your businesses to create the merch, or is that open? Like, do you have other people use you for printing and everything?
Yeah. So it's the first year we just printed specifically for the companies that were kind of like in my sphere of like where I operate. But the last, it's probably like 6 months or so, we've opened it up. We're doing some small jobs. And then we recently, we got a job. We did one of the basketball leagues out here. And, it kind of goes back to, hopefully, if anybody is like, I don't know, like anybody in the city who's like listening to this, it's like whatever now. But I approached them, and they're like, oh, well, like what kind of jobs have you done? Like can you do something like this? And I'm like, yeah. In all honesty, guys, like we had never done a job like that before ever. In fact, we didn't even have the piece of equipment that was needed to press the like athletic material, the jerseys for basketball.
Yep.
Yeah, because it was something. It wasn't just like a screen printing. We needed something else, and so this whole time it was like, yeah, oh yeah, we can definitely do that.
We got this.
No problem. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what is shipping going to be on this thing? Like, how fast can we get this piece of equipment here? Because
start Googling and getting the right equipment in.
Yeah, so it was like, and we did it and we crushed it. And I knew, like, I was like, if we can get this job, then this job can pay for another piece of equipment that we can get for our screen printing company, like embroidery or like another press that can help grow the company. So, so we did it, and we got the job, and everything was fantastic. And hopefully that'll be like the first of many of like the local sports teams and like within the community that we can continue to press and to work on.
That's awesome. I feel like that just shows your attitude, though, because like with the building situation with American Brew, with the not having the machine, so many people would have been like, okay, this is my sign. I should probably just like stop.
Yeah.
And then get scared. But
yeah, I definitely love,
yeah,
I love challenges. I love feeling challenged. Yeah. So.
that's awesome.
Well, you do really well with it. You don't let anything stand in your way. You're like, if there's a will, there's a way to do it, and Ashley's going to get it done.
Yeah. And I think what like an important message that I would love for everybody to understand is that, like, I mean, even back in the day, whenever I was competing and getting on stage, and it's almost like we're not necessarily afraid of the failing. We're afraid of what our peers are going to say, if like what we look like if we fail. And that's kind of like the thought process that like goes in our mind. And I want everybody to understand, like, no matter how many times I got on stage in a bikini to be judged by my peers, to be judged on stage for like, picking me apart, I'm always scared. I'm always scared. The same thing when it comes to like making business decisions. It's just like, it's like a giant board of chess. You're just playing like this chess game, right? Like it's always scary. So like if somebody's like starting a new endeavor and they feel scared or intimidated, know that even the best entrepreneurs out there, the most successful people, they still have that thought of fear within them. I think that, you know, we all have the two voices in our heads. We all have like like what if you fail? Like you're such a loser. Oh, you're gonna, you know, and then you have this other one that's like, oh, you could do it. You want to do it. You want to do it. And so, you know, after time, like, you know, that voice is always there. It's always there. But once you strengthen the courageousness, like within you, once you strengthen the positivity, like within you, and that voice is louder, it's easier to drown out the negative voice that's inside, if that makes sense. But, you know, people need to understand no matter what they're embarking on or what they're doing, like it's always scary. It's always scary.
That's a good point.
So you're a mom, you're an entrepreneur, great businesswoman. I hear you also have a charity or a nonprofit.
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have a nonprofit. It's called the Unbroken Foundation. And so like in the beginning, like going back, we're kind of like talking, and we go back to like the roots of like the fitness, like where it all started. And for the longest time, I talked to you about how, you know, my one goal was to be successful for my boys. Well, I went on this journey of truly finding what it meant to be successful. You hear the world tries to define what success means or what success should mean or what success looks like. And, you know, I was competing. I was like, well, if I become a fitness model, I was like, then I'll probably be successful. And, you know, I became a bona fide fitness model. I didn't feel any different. It didn't pay like a whole lot of money. It wasn't like a fashion model like in New York or London. And, you know, I was like, well, you know, maybe I just need to be like endorsed and, you know, get the brands behind me, get on the covers of magazines. And then, you know, I'm like, that should probably be what success is. Got there, didn't really change me, didn't really feel any different. And so it's just kind of like this journey. Like it was several years of me trying to figure out what like it really meant within myself of like defining success for myself. And then I reached financial success. Before I was even 30, I made my first $1 million, and I got there and I was like, well, it didn't feel any different. Like it didn't change me. I'm like, you know, like what's all like
didn't define you.
Yeah. And so, I don't remember what my first charity event was, but, the first time I was able to use my God-given fitness ability with the platform that I had created, using both of those to give back to those in need, that is what truly defined success for me and in my heart. And that is where like the passion of just like wanting to help others kind of came to life. And working with the Unbroken Foundation that I have, I really wanted to empower women. I wanted to empower women to believe in themselves, that they are capable and they can do it. Because I was there once, and you know, I really struggled with even the self-confidence that I had. I really struggled knowing what my path should be, and if I should be reliant on another person, or if I can independently be successful and be a mother, be a single mother, and execute everything and be successful. And that is the story and like the mission and how the Unbroken Foundation came to life, is wanting to help other women and children in need. So I do a lot of partnering with the Her Shelter out in, I think it's I think their office is like out in Chesapeake. It's kind of far away actually. I was like, yeah. So that's kind of how like the whole, like the charity. And then, so ever since then, you know, anytime I do a lot of like fitness events, and it's usually centered around a charity. To, you don't always have to raise money. Sometimes just raising like awareness about a charity
Right.
does sometimes even more good, because people will come on and be like, oh, like I would love to support this by volunteering my time. So it's been very, very fulfilling for me.
Awesome. Very cool. And then I don't know, I know you're involved with, is it the orphanage in Haiti? Is that yours, or
No. It is the board. The board of directors is located here in Chesapeake. It is not mine. I consider all those kids out there in Haiti mine. It's been actually extremely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic and everything, I used to go out there like every 3 months. Like our summer vacations were spent out there. I'm really, really close to some of the kids out there. And like ever since the pandemic, I haven't been able to travel out there. And then their president got assassinated. And so there's the whole country right now over there in Haiti is just like in turmoil. So I have not been out there in probably, oh man, maybe it's been like 2 years. It's been really, I really, really desperately like miss those kids. But I have meetings with the director. She's actually here local. So I do get to have meetings, and I still help with fundraising efforts for the orphanage, kind of like on this side of things. So, but yeah, I mean, it's the reason why I absolutely love the orphanage out there is, their mission is to educate and to build young leaders, and they actually don't adopt out their kids, and which makes sense. Like, in order to turn a third world country around, you have to basically start at the roots and the foundation, and you have to educate from within. Like, you don't and it's Maison Fortuné Orphanage, MFO Orphanage, if people want to look it up. They don't adopt out their kids. They instill education with their children to create the better leaders, because in order for a third world country to turn around at all, like, you have to start with education. And we don't need Haiti to become another America. Haiti is Haiti. The Haitians there are beautiful. The country there is beautiful. They just need to be educated, and they need to have better leaders and a better government to help with that entire process. So it just takes time, a lot of time. Yeah. Sometimes.
So that's awesome. Yeah, I'd seen you, like, just the different fundraisers and the events that you do. So that's really cool. So I guess the 40-hour run that you did, was that to raise money for Haiti?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so originally I was supposed to go to it in Haiti, and this was when the pandemic happened. And I was actually going to take a team of people over there, like people who wanted to be a part of the fundraiser. I was going to take a team of people over there to run with me for 40 hours. And the 40 hours represented the 20 hours that had passed, and then the 20 hours leading up. The 20 hours represented the 20 years of the past, because it was their 20-year anniversary of having the orphanage. So the 20 hours represented the 20 years of the past, and then the additional 20 hours represented the 20 years in the future, for just a bright future for the kids. And I really wanted to go over to Haiti to run that with them, but I couldn't. So I still wanted to do something, and it was really on my heart. So I ran it here in Virginia Beach. That's awesome. That was pretty.
Yeah, I was curious if the number was significant. Or
yeah, pretty much everything that I do, the number game has, for the most part, it has like a significance, in some way.
And what was that like? Like 40 hours? That's no small feat. Do you have like a team like following you, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, I had like 2 people with me all the time. Somebody either on a bike. I just like every time I stopped, it was like every hour I was eating Uncrustables. And dude, for the longest time I was like, I'm never eating an Uncrustable again. And like, that's how many Uncrustables. But I was hallucinating really bad. I have 2 black Belgian Malinois, and I remember there was like this black backpack on the ground, and I think this was when I was doing the track. I was going around the track, and I remember being like, I was like, Raven. Raven's my smaller female. I was like, Raven. First of all, Raven wasn't. I had Bones with me the whole time. He was probably in the kennel or something, or in the truck, because he wasn't out at that time. But I was like, Raven. I was like, hey, Raven. And then I remember like the team people, they were like, yo, that's a backpack. It's a
You good? Like,
oh my gosh, yeah. And then there was one time I was like stretching out or something, and I said something about Barbie, and it was just so random. And then like as soon as I said it, I was like, what did I just say? It was super, super bizarre. But yeah, we raised a lot of money for the orphanage.
Awesome.
And yeah, it was successful.
Okay.
very cool. So what is next for you? You know, you have all these businesses. Do you plan on expanding any of them or franchising out anything?
Yeah, where do you want me to start?
Oh gosh, let's start with the coffee.
Yeah,
Or whiskey.
well, athletically, I'm doing a 24-hour run. I'm doing a 24-hour 5K repeat in a couple weeks. It's like the beginning of February, for like the Her Shelter to raise money. But I'm doing a 5K every hour on the hour. And so people can run it virtually with me, or they can, if they want to fly. Some people are flying into Virginia to run it with me. So that's like the next physical feat that I'm going to be doing. And so yeah, with American Brew, I'm in the process of buying a roaster. That's going to be the next step that American Brew needs to do. And I've wanted to do this kind of like since the beginning, but you know, I typically just focus on one project at a time, like within a company. And I you know, it takes, depending on what it is, it can take some time. So I'm currently in the process of purchasing a roaster. And now it's learning where or how that piece of equipment is going to fit in American Brew. If I want to, I'm definitely going to open up another one. In fact, I have gotten to like the final yard line of executing another location probably 3 times. And for whatever reason, it's either fallen through, or like I've changed my mind, or like it just didn't, like, you know, and which is okay. It's all been good. I'm really glad. This is something else that it's really important for people to understand, is that like whenever you have an opportunity, or you're like on this path and everything seems great, and it looks like it's going to be a green light and you feel good about it, but something happens, it doesn't mean, it's like these roadblocks that come up, right? It doesn't mean that it was necessarily a bad idea. It could quite simply be like that it's just not the right time. So you shouldn't ever stop thinking about how you can expand or grow, because as adults, unfortunately, this is what happens to us. Like whenever we're children, we dream all the time, and we say that we want to do this, we want to do this. Something happens like within our adolescence and, you know, going into adulthood, that we stop dreaming, and we think that we need to get the, 401 5K or whatever it's called, and that we need to, have a 9-to-5 job, and that we need to, save our money and invest our money and get a savings account, and, all this stuff. And we kind of start just kind of conforming to what we think we're supposed to do, instead of dreaming about who we really want to be and the things that we want to try. And so the roaster for American Brew is going to be the next step. I have a food truck that I'm hoping it's on its last. It's got to go to the city to get inspected, like for the food part of things, and then after that, the food truck will be like ready to go. But yeah, opening up another location for sure. It's finding the right location. is very important. And then like the roasting of the coffee beans. So that's next for American Brew. American Screenprinting, I'm just going to grow that into a monster. As long as I love it. And this is something too that's like really important. I had a gym. I had a gym that was open. It was open to the public. It was called American Sled Dogs. And, I didn't, it kind of started going down and pivoting down like a path that I wasn't satisfied with the direction of the company. And I ended up closing it down. I ended up closing down American Sled Dogs. And again, too, I think that like people think that this idea of like, and I kind of held on to it for the longest time. It had a lot of sentimental value to me. Like I had a lot of memories in that gym. But I kind of held on to it also for the longest time because I was like, I didn't like, does this mean that I failed a business? Does this mean that I couldn't do what I set out to do and do it well? And through that lesson, what I understand now is that we all go through different seasons, and sometimes letting go of things or pausing them, it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that it's not serving you right now in this season, and that's okay. And so, with all of my companies, like American Screenprinting, the goal is to grow it into just a monster of a business. But the point is to that story is that like I have to truly love it, and that's something that over the last year or two that I've really have recognized about myself is that I have to be very passionate about what I'm doing, or I just lose interest. And you can tell from the output and the work that I'm just like the passion is no longer there. So American Screenprinting is awesome. Like we just hired on another graphic designer, and a lot of really, really good plans for American Screenprinting. I want to do do you guys know custom ink?
Yes.
So my goal is to become a competitor of custom ink for the online like e-commerce side of things. However, this is like, whenever I say I encourage people to just dream, like throw it out there, whatever you want to do, the direction that you want to go, your aspirations, think like huge, like big picture. But what people like, I may get there and I may get closer to like what I'm envisioning now, and I may get there and it may not identify with what I want American Screenprinting to do or to become. Like, because I talk about how it's important for me to like the creativity and the design work, and I may get to a point with American Screenprinting where I feel like I'm not super connected with the customers anymore. I feel like that it's too big, and it's not like it's not the same vision that I thought it was going to be. And so you can always pull that back. But what I like to do is encourage people to just like really, really dream big, and don't hold back.
If you have one piece of advice you could give to our listeners, what would it be?
Yeah.
In regards to what?
Just
life, business,
starting
whatever.
a business. Yep.
Starting a business. I mean, there's so much advice that I could give, but it's only because I've done it and I've failed and I've had to like figure it out like the hard way. I mean, those are like the best lessons, but it just kind of comes back to like what we've been talking about. It's like you can't be afraid to try. You can't be afraid to try, and if you guys want to do something, we didn't even talk about, this is very applicable, whether it's business related, growing in like your leadership, or even fitness related. If you wake up every single day and you continue to do the same thing, you're going to get to the same destination. You're not going to change at all.
Right.
But if you learn to change certain things throughout the course of your day and create the disciplines that you need, and you're not afraid to try and you're not afraid to fail, that is when your final destination will change. Oftentimes, like I have people they all, you think about it like, we can talk about like the World Series, right? Every team starts at the beginning of the season. They want to be there at the World Series. That's their goal. What's your goal? You come like the coach is like, oh, like we're going to be the next World Series champs. We're going to be in the World Series. We're going to be the champion. You never go to like a major league, sports team and they're like, oh, we don't care. We're just here just to, like, it doesn't matter.
Just to play ball.
Everybody wants to win. Right. But the difference is the discipline that you have, and knowing that like you have to do something different than what you've been doing. Because if you don't, you're going to get the same results. So many times, like, people are like, oh, like I want to reach this goal, or I want to do this. And, a lot of people have like the same goals and the same aspirations, but not everybody is willing to change something to redirect their course to get them to the destination that they truly want to be at. And so, my advice for people who are wanting to start a business, would just like, don't be afraid to dream, put it all out on paper. And, you have to visualize it. You really have to visualize. A lot of what I do is, like a visual identity, like identifying on not necessarily like the goals that I have, but like who I want to be. Like I identify with that person now. Like if you were like, oh, I'm trying to stop smoking. Like I'm, I don't want to smoke anymore. Well, you need to be a non-smoker now. So like when somebody is like, hey, do you want to smoke? Do you want a cigarette? And you're like, oh, no, thank you. Like, I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke. I don't like, and I think that instead of being like, oh, like I'm trying to quit, or like I'm working on quitting, it's like, you need to identify with that person and who you want to become now.
Yep.
Like, don't necessarily focus on like the end goal of not being a smoker anymore. Be that person now, like make that person your identity now. And, I think that like, if you look at anybody's life who's successful and, successful in finances, successful in family or relationships, successful in entrepreneurship, what they have done is like, they make small changes in small disciplines, like every year for several years. And it kind of all like compacts, together to make a big change. And so
where can we find you? Social medias, websites?
Yeah. So, Instagram, it's ashley.horner. My website is ashleyhorner.co. I'm basically all over, and you can just Google Ashley Horner and all my stuff pops up, but, I'm on, Instagram quite a bit. And then my, website is updated pretty regularly.
Awesome. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for today. We appreciate all the knowledge that you just bestowed upon us. I hope our listeners get a lot of information out of this today.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I really do. It's something that I'm starting to realize that I am really passionate about, is like helping other people kind of like who they aspire to be. All of my employees who come in, it doesn't matter if, they're at the bottom of the totem pole of like doing dishes or whatever. I love to sit down with them and ask them like, where do you want to be in like 5 years? Like, where do you want to be in 2 years? And, I absolutely love helping people get there, because I was there at one time, and, I am by no means an expert, but I have had a lot of experiences. I have done a lot of things wrong. And, with those mistakes and with those experiences, I believe it's given me a lot of information that I can, share with other people going down a similar path. That, little tidbits, but ultimately it's like, you have to just get out there and go do it yourself. And because that's when you're really going to learn, and that's when you're really going to grow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Amazing.